Cincinnati is a city and the county seat of Hamilton County, Ohio, United States. It is the third largest city in Ohio and the 65th largest city in the United States. It had a population of 296,945 at the 2010 census. According to the census, the population of the metropolitan area was 2,214,954, the 28th largest metropolitan statistical area in the United States and the largest centered in Ohio. Settled in 1788, the city is located on the north side of the confluence of the Licking with the Ohio River. The latter forms the border between the states of Ohio and Kentucky. In the early 19th century, Cincinnati was an American boomtown in the heart of the country. It rivaled the larger coastal cities in size and wealth. Throughout much of the 19th century, it was listed among the top 10 U.S. cities by population, surpassed only by New Orleans in the older, established settlements of the eastern seaboard, at one point holding the position of sixth largest city for a period spanning consecutive census reports from 1840 until 1860. It was by far the largest city in the West, because it is the first major American city founded after the American Revolution as well as the first major inland city in the country. Cincinnati is sometimes thought of as the first purely American city. Cincinnati developed with less European immigration or influence than eastern cities attracted in the same period. However, it received a significant number of German immigrants, who founded many of the city's cultural institutions. By the end of the 19th century, with the shift from steamboats to railroads drawing off freight shipping, trade patterns had altered and Cincinnati's growth slowed considerably. The city was surpassed in population by other inland cities, particularly Chicago, which developed based on commodity exploitation and the railroads, and St. Louis, for decades after the Civil War, the gateway to westward migration. Cincinnati is home to two major sports teams, the Cincinnati Reds, the oldest franchise in Major League Baseball, and the Cincinnati Bengals of the National Football League. The University of Cincinnati, founded in 1819, is one of the 50 largest in the United States. Cincinnati is known for its historic architecture. In the late 1800s, Cincinnati was commonly referred to as Paris of America, due mainly to such ambitious architectural projects as the Music Hall, Cincinnati Hotel, and Shiloh department store. History. Cincinnati was founded by European Americans in 1788 when Matthias Denman, Colonel Robert Patterson and Israel Ludlow landed at the spot on the north bank of the Ohio River opposite the mouth of the Licking River and decided to settle there. The original surveyor, John Filson, named it Louisonville. In 1790, Arthur Street Clare, the governor of the Northwest Territory, changed the name of the settlement to Cincinnati, in honor of the Society of the Cincinnati, made up of Revolutionary War veterans, of which he was a member. Ethnic Germans were among the early settlers, migrating from Pennsylvania and the backcountry of Virginia and Tennessee. General David Ziegler succeeded General Street Clare in command at Fort Washington. After the conclusion of the Northwest Indian Wars and removal of Native Americans to the west, he was elected as the mayor of Cincinnati in 1802. The introduction of steamboats on the Ohio River in 1811 opened up its trade to more rapid shipping, and the city established commercial ties with St. Louis, Missouri and especially New Orleans downriver. Cincinnati was incorporated as a city in 1819. Exporting pork products and hay, it became a center of pork processing in the region. From 1810 to 1830 its population nearly tripled, from 9,642 to 24,831. Completion of the Miami and Erie Canal in 1827 to Middletown, Ohio, further stimulated businesses, and employers struggled to hire enough people to fill positions. The city had a labor shortage until large waves of immigration by Irish and Germans in the late 1840s. The city grew rapidly over the next 2 decades, reaching 115,000 persons by 1850. Construction on the Miami and Erie Canal began on July 21, 1825, when it was called the Miami Canal, related to its origin at the Great Miami River. The first section of the canal was opened for business in 1827. In 1827, the canal connected Cincinnati to nearby Middletown. By 1840, it had reached Toledo. During this period of rapid expansion and prominence, residents of Cincinnati began referring to the city as the Queen City. Cincinnati depended on trade with the slave states south of the Ohio River, at a time when thousands of blacks were settling in the free state of Ohio, most from Kentucky and Virginia, and some of them fugitives seeking freedom in the North. Many came to find work in Cincinnati. In the antebellum years, the majority of native-born whites in the city came from northern states, primarily Pennsylvania. In 1841, 26% of whites were from the South and 57% from the eastern states, primarily Pennsylvania. They retained their cultural support for slavery. This led to tensions between pro-slavery residents and those in favor of abolitionism and lifting restrictions on free people of color, as codified in the Black Code of 1804. The volatile social conditions produced white-led riots against blacks occurred in 1829, when many blacks lost their homes and property. As Irish immigrants entered the city in the late 1840s, they competed with blacks at the lower levels of the economy. White-led riots against blacks occurred in 1836, when an abolitionist press was twice destroyed, and in 1842. More than 1,000 blacks abandoned the city after the 1829 riots. Blacks in Philadelphia and other major cities raised money to help the refugees recover from the destruction. By 1842, blacks had become better established in the city. They defended their persons and property in the riot, and worked politically as well. After the steamboats, railroads were the first major form of commercial transportation to come to Cincinnati. In 1836, the Little Miami Railroad was chartered. Construction began soon after, to connect Cincinnati with the Mad River and Lake Erie Railroad, and provide access to the ports of the Sandusky Bay on Lake Erie. In 1859, Cincinnati laid out 6 streetcar lines. The cars were pulled by horses and the lines made it easier for people to get around the city. By 1872, Cincinnatians could travel on the streetcars within the city and transfer to rail cars for travel to the hill communities. The Cincinnati Inclined Plane Company began transporting people to the top of Mount Auburn that year. In 1880, the city government completed the Cincinnati Southern Railway to Chattanooga, Tennessee. It is the only municipality-owned interstate railway in the United States. In 1884, outrage over a manslaughter verdict in what many observers thought was a clear case of murder triggered the courthouse riots, one of the most destructive riots in American history. Over the course of 3 days, 56 people were killed and over 300 were injured. The riots ended the regime of political bosses John Roll McLean and Thomas C. Campbell in Cincinnati. In 1889, the Cincinnati streetcar system began converting its horsecar lines to electric streetcars. An early rejuvenation of downtown began in the 1920s and continued into the next decade with the construction of Union Terminal, the post office, and the large Cincinnati and Suburban Telephone Company building. Cincinnati weathered the Great Depression better than most American cities of its size, largely because of a resurgence in river trade, which was less expensive than transporting goods by rail. The flood of 1937 was one of the worst in the nation's history and destroyed many areas along the Ohio Valley. Afterward, the city built protective flood walls. Geography. A major city of the Ohio Valley, Cincinnati is situated on the north bank of the Ohio River in Hamilton County. which is the extreme southwestern county of the state of Ohio. It is midway by river between the cities of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Cairo, Illinois. The city lies opposite the mouth of the Licking River, an important factor in its being sited where it is. Cincinnati's core metro area spans parts of southern Ohio and northern Kentucky. According to the United States Census Bureau, the city has a total area of 79.54 square miles, of which 77.94 square miles is land and 1.60 square miles is water. The city spreads over a number of hills, bluffs, and low ridges overlooking the Ohio River in the bluegrass region of the country. Cincinnati is geographically located within the Midwest and is on the far northern periphery of the upland South. Two-thirds of the American population live within a one-day drive of the city. Unusually, Cincinnati has three smaller municipalities within its borders: Norwood, Elmwood Place, and St. Bernard. Norwood is a significant business and industrial city, while Elmwood Place and St. Bernard are small, primarily residential, villages. This topography is often used for physical activity. The steps of Cincinnati carry pedestrians up and down the many hills in the city. In addition to practical use linking hillside neighborhoods, the 400 stairways provide visitors scenic views of the Cincinnati area. Cityscape Downtown Cincinnati is focused around Fountain Square, a public square and event location. Cincinnati is home to numerous structures that are noteworthy due to their architectural characteristics or historic associations, including the Carew Tower, the Scripps Center, the Ingalls Building, Cincinnati Museum Center at Union Terminal, and the Isaac M. Wise Temple. The city is undergoing significant changes due to new development and private investment. This includes construction of the long-stalled Banks project, which will include apartments, retail, restaurants, and offices and will stretch from Great American Ballpark to Paul Brown Stadium. Phase 1A is already complete and 100% occupied as of early 2013. Smale Riverfront Park is being developed along with the Banks and is Cincinnati's newest park. Nearly $3.5 billion has been invested in the urban core of Cincinnati. Much has been done by 3CDC. Queen City Square opened in January 2011. The building is the tallest in Cincinnati, and is the third tallest in Ohio, reaching a height of 665 feet. In 2013, the Horseshoe Casino Cincinnati opened, the first casino in the city and fourth in the state of Ohio. The mile-long Cincinnati Sky Walk, which was completed in 1997, remains a viable way to traverse downtown on foot in an indoor environment, despite the removal of several segments based on modern urban development initiatives. Climate: Cincinnati belongs to a climatic transition zone, at the northern limit of the humid subtropical climate and the southern limit of the humid continental climate zone. Summers are warm to hot and humid, with significant rainfall in each month and highs reaching 90 degrees Fahrenheit or above on 21 days per year, often with high dew points and humidity. July is the warmest month, with a daily average temperature of 75.9 degrees Fahrenheit. Winters tend to be cold and snowy, with January, the coldest month, averaging at 30.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Lows reach 0 degrees Fahrenheit on an average 2.6 nights annually. An average winter will see around 22.1 inches of snowfall, contributing to the annual 42.5 inches of precipitation, with rainfall peaking in spring. Extremes range from -25 degrees Fahrenheit on January 18, 1977 up to 108 degrees Fahrenheit on July 21 and 22, 1934. Severe thunderstorms are common in the warmer months, and tornadoes, while infrequent, are not unknown. with such events striking the greater Cincinnati area most recently in 1974, 1999, and 2012. Hydrography: Cincinnati includes 22 miles of riverfront along the northern banks of the Ohio River, stretching from California to Ynsalh Park, giving the river and its movements a prominent place in the life of the city. Frequent flooding has hampered the growth of Cincinnati's municipal airport at Lunken Field and the Coney Island Amusement Park. Downtown Cincinnati is protected from flooding by the Serpentine Wall at Yateman's Cove and another flood wall built into Fort Washington Way. Parts of Cincinnati also experience flooding from the Little Miami River and Mill Creek. Since April 1, 1922, the Ohio River's flood stage at Cincinnati has officially been set at 52 feet, as measured from the John A. Roebling Suspension Bridge. At this depth, the pumping station at the mouth of Mill Creek is activated. From 1873 to 1898, the flood stage was 45 feet. From 1899 to March 31, 1922, it was 50 feet. The Ohio River reached its lowest level, less than 2 feet, in 1881. Conversely, its all-time high water mark is 79 feet 11 and 7/8 inches, having crested on January 26, 1937. During the flood of 1937, various parts of Cincinnati flood at different points. Riverbend Music Center in the California neighborhood floods at 42 feet. While Ynsalh Park floods at 71 feet and the Freeman Avenue floodgate closes at 75 feet. Demographics: for several decades the Census Bureau had been reporting a steady decline in the city's population as residents moved out to new suburbs in the post-war years, aided by newly built highways. In addition, industrial restructuring cost a loss of jobs in the late 20th century. But, according to the Census Bureau's 2006 estimates, the population was 332,252, representing an increase from 331,310 in 2005. The city had officially challenged the original census numbers. In addition, Mayor Mark Mallory has repeatedly argued that the city's population is 378,259. After a drill-down study was performed by an independent, non-profit group based in Washington, D.C. As of the 2010 census, the racial demographics for the city of Cincinnati were 49.3% white, 44.8% black or African American, 0.3% American Indian or Alaskan Native, 1.8% Asian, 0.1% Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, 2.5% two or more races, and 2.8% Hispanic. As of the 2000 census, the Cincinnati-Middletown-Wilmington Metropolitan Statistical Area has a population of 2,155,137 people, making it the 24th largest MSA in the country. It includes the Ohio counties of Hamilton, Butler, Warren, Clermont, and Brown, as well as the Kentucky counties of Boone, Bracken, Campbell, Gallatin, Grant, Kenton, and Pendleton, and the Indiana counties of Dearborn, Franklin, and Ohio. Race relations: because of its location on the Ohio River, Cincinnati was a border town in a free state, across from Kentucky, a slave state. Some residents of Cincinnati played a major role in abolitionism. Many fugitive slaves used the Ohio River at Cincinnati to escape to the north. Cincinnati had numerous stations on the Underground Railroad, but there were also slave catchers active in the city, who put escaping slaves at risk of recapture. Given its southern Ohio location, Cincinnati had also attracted settlers from the Upper South, who traveled along the Ohio River into the territory. Tensions between abolitionists and slavery supporters broke out in repeated violence, with whites attacking blacks in 1829. Anti-abolitionists attacked blacks in the city in a wave of destruction that resulted in 1,200 blacks leaving the city and the country. They resettled in Canada. The riot and its refugees were a topic of discussion throughout the nation, and blacks organized the first Negro Convention in 1830 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to discuss these events. White riots against blacks took place again in Cincinnati in 1836 and 1842. In 1836, a mob of 700 pro-slavery men attacked black neighborhoods, as well as a press run by James M. Birney, publisher of the anti-slavery weekly The Philanthropist. Tensions increased after congressional passage in 1850 of the Fugitive Slave Act, which required cooperation by citizens in free states and increased penalties for failing to try to recapture escaped slaves. Levi Coffin made the Cincinnati area the center of his anti-slavery efforts in 1847. Harriet Beecher Stowe lived in Cincinnati for a time, met escaped slaves, and used their stories as a basis for her watershed novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. The National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, which opened in 2004 on the Cincinnati Riverfront in the middle of the Banks area between Great American Ballpark and Paul Brown Stadium, commemorates the volunteers who aided refugee slaves and the drive for freedom, as well as others who have been leaders for social justice. Located in a free state and attracting many European immigrants, Cincinnati has historically had a predominantly white population. By 1940, the Census Bureau reported the city's population as 87.8% white and 12.2% black. In the second half of the 20th century, Cincinnati, along with other Rust Belt cities, underwent a vast demographic transformation. By the early 21st century, the city was 40% black, predominantly white, working-class families who had filled the urban core during the European immigration boom in the 19th and early 20th centuries, moved to newly constructed suburbs before and after World War II. Blacks, fleeing the oppression of the Jim Crow South in hopes of better socio-economic opportunity, had filled these older city neighborhoods in the Great Migration to the industrial North. The downturn in industry in the late 20th century caused a loss of many jobs, leaving many people stuck in poverty. In 1968, passage of national civil rights legislation had raised hopes for positive change. But the assassination of national leader Martin Luther King, Jr., by a white man resulted in despair in black neighborhoods and riots by many in Cincinnati. Black riots took place in nearly every major U.S. city after King's murder. More than 3 decades later, in April 2001, racially charged riots occurred after police fatally shot a young unarmed black man, Timothy Thomas, during a foot pursuit to arrest him, mostly for outstanding traffic warrants. After the 2001 riots, a collaborative agreement was formed among the ACLU, Cincinnati Black United Front, City and Police Union, which required police to adopt community-oriented policing as a strategy. The collaborative agreement has been used as a model across the country for building positive relationships between police and the communities they serve. Economy. Major corporations have their head offices in Cincinnati, such as Procter & Gamble, the Kroger Company, and Macy's, Inc., amongst others. Kroger, the largest employer in the city, has 17,000 employees. The University of Cincinnati is the second largest, with 15,162 employees.